I wanted the Highlander School to be a place where children, it wasn't about their economic function, because that tends to be our dominant. They can become good workers or consumers, but a place where they would be honored just by the sheer fact that they were humans and that they would have a voice and be able to speak up and speak out. And if you come to our school, you'll see an image of Dr. King walking with children. And as I come to the building every day, it reminds me that our fight begins and always has begun with children for a better world.
You're listening to Little Big Ideas. We're your hosts, Anne-Marie Coughlin
and Lori McGee. Little Big Ideas is brought to you by our sponsor, Storypark.
Storypark puts the child at the heart of childcare management with its all-in-one platform for early childhood education.
Hi, Anne-Marie.
Hey, Lori.
How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. We're seeing each other virtually today, but we actually did have some time together in person this past weekend, which was so lovely to have that time together.
Yeah, that was great.
I have to tell you something, because the girls were asking me, we had a girls' weekend at Anne-Marie's this past weekend, and the girls were asking me how we actually first met. And and I was able to share, we're 20 years together now, which is amazing.
We are.
But I shared with them that that London Bridge was part of a conference, on a tour for a conference, and I was at the conference and I did the tour, and I was starting to work in an emergent curriculum way in our organization, and you had been doing that for a few years. So I was completely intrigued and needed to meet you. And
you reached out.
I reached out, but you didn't call me back.
I did not.
And I reached out again and you still didn't call me back. So I reached out again and finally, you called me back. And it's been, I think for me, I think when you are in a place where you're exploring new ideas and you're trying to think about a new way of being in the world, whether for me, it was with children and families and around curriculum. I didn't have anyone around me at that time that was, in doing the work in that way. So finding someone and finding community. And I think that's, I think about that a lot, in the sense that that's how we found each other, was around our shared values and our desire to do this work together. Mm-hmm. It's been a pretty lovely relationship for 20 years.
Yes. And I do give that initial connection. I give you credit for that for sure, because I did not return the call. But when we did, when I finally did, it was great. And we have gone on to travel over many continents and do lots of work together. And of course, share what we've been working on and what we're thinking about in our own organizations. And that connection that we have had has filtered out into a larger community where we've been able to embrace and think with and dream with and create with many, many different people, both across our organizations, but across this country and Canada and across the US and around the world.
And around the world. I mean, I think that's, we talk about the number of continents we've had the opportunity to work with educators all across the world. And I think that I always think about the early childhood community is such a broad community. I mean, you can go anywhere and you can make a connection with somebody who holds a deep desire to do the kind of work that we do with children and families. And it's so evident. And I know that for us, part of that work was with Harvest Resources many years ago, who Margie Carter and Deb Curtis founded Harvest as a way to build professional learning and grow a profession based on values and build a culture of reflective practice. That was, and to elevate the voices of marginalized educators as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that notion of wrapping yourself in community has been such an important one. And one of the gifts I think we've had in the traveling and meeting with different folks is we get to see how childcare can unfold in so many different ways. That there isn't one right way. But it is. I do feel so honored and grateful to be able to have our guest today, which is an old friend and inspiration, I know, to both of us and to many other people, Rukia Rogers. Do you want to maybe give her a formal introduction,
Sure.
And then I can move on to how we met?
I'll read her bio, and then we'll go on to. So Rukia Monique Rogers, she founded the Highlander School in 2013. I remember because we were there the year that the school opened. We were part of that, a small part of that. It's a nature-based program that's committed to anti-bias work and social justice work. She's worked with young children and families for over 30 years, and she's been a preschool teacher and a toddler educator and a studio teacher and a curriculum coordinator. And Rukia received her early childhood training from Georgia State University and Chattahoochee Technical College. She is the author of an incredibly beautiful book that I know both of our organizations have been studying over time, The Many Stories of Our Beloved Community, a book that honors young children's kinship and connections with the world. She's also the owner and director of the Highlander School in Atlanta, Georgia. And it is such a unique, powerful school that she has brought to life and brought community to life there.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because, she writes in her book that the book is about stories shared as a result of love and work and fierce commitment that her community has to reimagine a world. And that's what this podcast is about. And it's interesting because we're both from very large organizations, but and I know that people have traveled to visit us before, but one of the things that's always struck me is how much inspiration we get from the single site operators, the small schools in communities that just absolutely transform their communities by the work that they do. And Rukia's school, the Highlander School, is definitely one of them. She is a powerhouse of a woman, and has become, like others, such a dear friend over the years. I think we first met her. She was working with Harvest as a facilitator up in our communities, around our community.
Around 17 years ago. We had the pleasure to work with her as a facilitator at the Institute. I think that that was transformational in our work, I know. And then we traveled to New Zealand for the Inspire study tour with Margie Carter and Deb Curtis, and Rukia was there. And you think about pivotal moments in your career. That is probably one of the most pivotal moments, certainly in my career, and the opportunity to know this incredible human being that Rukia is, and to see what she has been able to do, because that was 15 years ago, and the school at that point was a dream. So I'm really excited to have Rukia on today. And I know we chatted with her a little bit last week, so we had a little bit of a chance to see her. And one of the most phenomenal early childhood leaders that I know, for sure.
Yeah. She definitely takes on topics and ideas that most people would think it would be impossible with early learning. And she does it with grace and understanding and extraordinary knowledge and sensitivity
and tenacity.
Yeah.
And tenacity. Yeah.
So we are super excited to share her with the world. Although so many people already know her.
I know, so many,
but more people need to. More people
need to hear her voice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, beautifuls.
So good to see you.
So great to see you again. I know we just had this beautiful chat last week about this, but we could meet with you every week.
Every week.
And never get tired.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
True words.
Yeah.
It's like talking to old friends.
Yeah. And I think we were just talking about that, about how long we've known each other, and the beautiful relationship and the gift that you are in our lives. And I know the gift that you are in so many lives of the folks around you. We are incredibly grateful that you're here. And we're incredibly grateful that you are part of our community.
Thank you for inviting me to be a part of another profound conversation. You both seem to always make space for that.
Thanks. Beautiful. Okay. So I'm so excited about this because I was telling Lori when we were conceiving this idea of having a podcast, it was about both an eagerness that we have to reimagine early learning in this 21st century, right? And also to be able to, we've acknowledged that we've had such opportunity to meet such amazing people who are doing incredible work, important work, and also have had the gift of conversation and connection with so many people. And we thought, wow, wouldn't this be a great opportunity for us to have a podcast where we could have those conversations with folks. And then, I was reminded that your book, which we want to talk about, like you literally talk about in your book, about this being a time and a space to think about this reimagining of community. And that is what your school really, from this perspective looking in, has been built on. So you are the perfect person.
And we just want other people to hear your story and other people to hear your voice and the incredible work that you're doing. Anne-Marie and I both come from really large multi-site organizations, and we've been able to do a lot of incredible things. And you, in this one small site in Atlanta, Georgia, have had profound impact on the early childhood world and in your community, but for so many people around you, it has had such incredible impact. I know we have been studying your book at Compass, and I know Anne-Marie, the same for you. But our delight in being able to have this connection with you for many years. So we're excited for you to be able to share a bit of your story about the Highlander School and the work that you're doing to create this beloved community around you.
I wonder, Rukia, this is the name of your book. I want to make sure that we get it out there. The Many Stories of Our Beloved Community, Honoring Young Children's Kinship and Connections with the World.
Do you have it right there, Mary? You can hold it up.
I do, because some people watch us on YouTube. I do. It's well loved. But I wonder if you just start, Rukia, by talking about what a beloved community means to you. We've heard that phrase come out of you so many times and felt it every time.
Yeah, again, thank you for creating the space to have this conversation, for the accolades. And I also just want to acknowledge that all that I have achieved has been in community with others, my ancestors, the land, and all those before us, and even our relationships I've learned and grown. The term beloved community was originally coined by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And as you know, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. This is his birth home, and it's also his resting space. And what this term beloved community, he spoke about a world and society where everyone had their rights, a world where it's full of love and equality and justice. And in a global framework, we're talking about where we can imagine a world where everyone has their needs met, housing, food. It feels like such a pertinent conversation to have at this time and this moment in the world, because as much as I feel so much joy in having this conversation, I recognize that living in the United States of America, or Turtle Island, more importantly, is that we've made a decision to have a society that is not life affirming, and that we invest heavily in militarization and policing instead of having a culture where we can guarantee housing and all those things that we each deserve. I sometimes feel despair knowing that, right? This knowing all the things that are happening in the world. And so we made this concerted decision and effort to say that if we, maybe the change we want to happen won't happen in our lifetime with young children, but if we could carve out this space and time with young children in our daily day lives where we could reaffirm them and create a sense of warmth and belonging and love, that in that way, that becomes our beloved community. I mean, our hope is for the beloved community to expand outside of our doors and our greater community and our global community. And for now, it's what we're going to harness in our work every single day with young children and in our community with families and grandparents and staff, all of that. But deeply inspired by, again, this term coined by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Even your reference to grandparents. I want to pause and point that out, because that is not something that we hear a lot of when people talk about community, this extension of family, this natural, and we know that about you, that your school is this place where that extended family is such an important piece. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good, we don't talk enough about the extended community. And I think I shared with you guys how we began with this notion of beloved community as the human world. And what we learned from children, what they reminded us of, is that they had such an expansive view of community that included the more than human world and the roly-polies and the snakes and all the things in between. We were doing an interview of members of our community, and we interviewed the librarian and the firefighter, all the things you would typically do, right? And the children said, but you forgot to interview the tree. And we were like, yeah, you're okay. We were a little bit not surprised, but when you're in this space where you also are learning from children and they're reminding you to reclaim our indigenous practices, and yeah, you're right, we didn't interview the tree. So they have held, and we've learned over the years that this notion, even that was offered of a beloved community, children have a much more expansive, open, fluid notion of that. And that feels inspiring, that we are and connected to Earth.
I know, Rukia, one of the things that I have loved about your book and the stories that you've shared is that the stories of the children's voices, that's one of the things that you always bring forward to this idea of community is how the children are inside of the community and how they understand and connect with the world around them. And you do such a beautiful job of bringing visibility to that voice in your programs. And I'm curious about that idea of, building community, but what actually drove you to open the Highlander School?
Oh my goodness, you're going to take me way back. It's interesting. That's like the most profound question for me. I don't get asked that a lot. My first major in school was actually political science. And I don't know what I thought I was going to do, work on a campaign. In early 2000s, I started working with children who were refugees. I think it was slightly before the Bosnian War. And seeing the impact again on violence and militarization and war. And I kept thinking, what if we invested in children? What if we invested in communities instead of war and so forth? And then I had gone to Reggio Emilia, was inspired by educators there, and I'd gone to Canada. We had met each other. I was working in the classroom, and I was searching for this place that really reflected all these ideals that we were wrestling with. And remember that journey we took to New Zealand. And I remember being there and crying, thinking about the way that they were threading through the Maori values and so forth. And so I said, you know what? I want to create a school that I want to work at. Like, I don't want to be the director. I did not. I'm not into
and yet you are.
Yes. That's but I worked in the classroom the first couple of years, right? Like small businesses. And I wanted to work, to create a school that I wanted to work at. So I was doing my student teaching, and I went to the program director. I said, "Can I do my student teaching in the school that I create?" They were like, "Girl, what's wrong?" I was like, "I'm going to open up the school and at the same time do my student teaching." They were like, and somehow, on the way of looking for a name, I read the story of Rosa Parks. People were like, "You should, put it the Learning Academy." Parents love that, some type of academy. And I just searched for a long time, happened to read the story of Rosa Parks and how 6 months before she refused to give up her seat that led to the Montgomery bus boycott, she'd gone and done her training at the Highlander Folk School. And then it started me on this spiral of studying the Highlander Folk School and these incredible, brave people who opened up a center in the 1930s in the Appalachian Mountains. They were of Scotch-Irish descent. They were organizing around worker rights. They were then organizing with other Black folks to deal and address with the civil rights issues. And they were burned down by the KKK. And they were harassed. And I thought about how brave of them to think of creating this space where we learn to resist. And so I knew from the beginning, I wanted the Highlander School to be a place where children, it wasn't about their economic function, because that tends to be our dominant. They can become good workers or consumers, but a place where they would be honored just by the sheer fact that they were humans and that they would have a voice and be able to speak up and speak out. We hadn't had it all perfectly ironed out. But I feel, again, as I said at the beginning, deeply inspired by the energies surrounding us in the Southeast and the activists and organizers who came before us. And if you come to our school, you'll see an image of Dr. King walking with children. And as I come to the building every day, it reminds me that our fight begins and always has begun with children for a better world.
That's beautiful, Rukia. And I think the thing that I feel is so important and needed right now, I hear a lot of talk about community, but they're still in a lot of those conversations. It just feels too saccharine, too sanitized, neat, if that makes any sense. But one of the things that I think is so important about your school and the way that you work is that your vision of community is so profound and so real and so connected, and responsive. Really responsive. You don't turn away from things that are uncomfortable. You embrace it. You walk it. And I wonder if that's something that you might speak a little bit about around this notion of you're thinking about the larger community in context with your childcare, because you don't run a childcare like most. Like you are deeply, profoundly embedded in that community. And I wonder if I know it's a huge question, but I just wonder if you can speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. It reminds me of a conversation that I had with a mother on the porch the other day, and we were talking about empathy. And I think this process that we are in that's unique in the conversations that we're having is to reclaim and to remember the fullness of our humanity, and that it's not the clock and capitalism and individualism that are going to create a pathway. It's a way of us knowing and being connected to ourselves and our ancestors and the moon and the sun and cosmologies. And one of the things that I see myself is deeply empathetic for other people. And it's something that we really nourish within the school. If someone falls, we show up for them and so forth, because you can't expect children to have deep concern from something that's happening thousands of miles away if you don't support their interactions. And you'll see toddlers always interested in a ladybug. and beetles and bugs and where do they go? We should make a bug house. You would see that theme probably in any school in Canada and New Zealand and Australia here. How much are we really paying attention to what children are informing us about? They are empathetic. We are born empathetic. And I think we create a space where we nurture that I care for myself. I am who we are. And I was telling this mom as we were talking, because I'm going to be honest, I've felt the heaviness of the world lately, joy and the heaviness. I said, when your child cries, and I know they're crying now, we've only been about a week and a half in the new school year, I get up and I move my body to make sure they're okay. But also the teacher is okay, that they're not overwhelmed. It's a deep empathy that I have for the child, but also I shared with her, it also means that when I see a child who is starving in Gaza or who doesn't have what they need in the Congo, that I feel the depth of that mother, the depth of that child. What can I do? And so it's something that we must nourish within children, that our safety, our world is interconnected with each other and this earth. So we take on big subjects. We have a community that there are members that are unhoused, and we walk and we interact with them with dignity. We talk about it. The children will ask, why don't they have food? We will share with them our knowledge. And so we've had whole projects around a community garden where the children said, everyone has a right to food, including the rats. That was a hard one for me. But including the rats, and so they remind you over and over again. And they just last year, they created, in addition to the community garden, a food pantry. And so we talk about homes and their homes. Most of our children live in houses, very few in apartments. None have been displaced. And then we tell them the other stories. If you're thinking about the anti-bias education goals and diversity of thought, this is your story. And there are other people who are experiencing different stories. So there are images we may share and talk about people who live in a house that's a tent and different ways that they're living. So again, I wrestle with that maybe the changes we want and yearn for won't happen in our own lifetime. But we're creating a foundation by which we support children's innate empathy towards each other, their ability to act. They want to act on behalf. We see it with the toddlers. Stop your bicycle. There's a roly-poly going by. They'll stop traffic on behalf. They will share their food. They know whose lovey is who, and they'll give it to them. We see it every day. We're offering it back to them, and we're amplifying it. And then we're also making connections to our greater community and then our global community. But we're first starting with those intimate relationships. I'm not going to let you cry it out. I'm going to hold you. You miss your mama? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a story that I often remember from your schools, that idea of caring for each other, that it isn't just about the educators caring for children, but creating a community where children care for one another. And that, some of those stories that you share in your book and that you've shared at times that we've been together, I think for me, that's that idea of seeing the capacity in children to care and not feeling like we need children to shy away. That, for educators or for the adults or the big people to take care of things, but building that place from a very early age about the importance of caring for one another on behalf of, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. And then there's different cultural values around that. We've had teachers there was a young Black child who was helping another student. The teacher happened to be white, and she said, okay, well, that doesn't have anything to do with you. Kind of a mind your business, right? Great opportunity to have a discussion how in different cultures we believe in interdependence and we value it. So she's doing what her culture has taught her, that she's helping another one. This concept of cheating or you need to do it alone. We've never been alone. We didn't come into this world alone. So again, going back to the framework and as early childhood educators, recognizing that schools were designed for people to have basic information to work in factories. We get to reclaim, we get to reimagine something different for a new world that we want to have. And so that's the power that we have every single day within the classroom or whatever your role is in an early childcare setting is, why are we here? Why are we engaged in this work? And again, as I described all those feelings of despair that I have, I walk into work every single day and feel so much joy of like, okay, y'all, I did something. Maybe this is something we've done right, you know?
I don't even have words really, Rukia, to say how inspiring and important, you know, the work that you do and your approach. I hesitate to even call it work because of course it's a lot of work. But it is life. It is life moving. It's the way that you are moving through life in your community that has such huge ripple effects. And I know personally you have helped me think about some really difficult situations in the world. Gaza being one of them for sure, and thinking about the role that we can take. And I know that I think we share this notion that children, as part of the community, they see things, they witness things, they witness the difficulties, they witness the beauty, they're curious about all of it. And you're someone who has never shied away from their curiosity. And because of that, have put yourself knowingly, perhaps, willingly for sure, in situations that not very many early childhood practitioners would allow themselves to go. And I think that is so incredible and so important. And you said something last week when we were together. You said that this is both a hard space and a soft space, and that you carry both of those things. And I wonder if you might just speak to that a little bit, about that hardness and softness that's so important in this life.
Yeah, it is important. And it's something that I've tried to wrestle with as I navigate taking care of myself so that I can show up for my community. You know, I consider myself to be an early childhood educator, but also an organizer. As I said, my first major was political science. So I've always been interested in the happenings of our community. And recently, the school participated in a movement to save a local forest, the Weelaunee Forest, and to stop Cop City, which was the building of the largest police foundation or police training site in the United States. And this was after the uprisings from George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, the Weelaunee Forest. This is recognizing that we are on indigenous land of the Muskogee people. So a lot of harm has taken place. That organizing meant a lot. It meant that we went to the city council with children and that we wrote letters. And I also want to emphasize that in that story, because of the children's relationships with this land, you know, for example, we have about 28 fruit-bearing trees. We're technically the school's a farm. So we grow a lot. I didn't tell you that.
I forgot about that. I did know that. That's amazing.
So we are. And so the kids, whenever a tree is planted, we ask them, we'll say, how can we welcome these trees? And because we learn from the children that they consider them as part of the community. So as years have gone on, it becomes our process. We plant a pawpaw tree. And so a lot of people aren't familiar with pawpaw trees, but they would have covered the Southeast. They bear a fruit that's similar to like a mango, And so when the children found out that there was going to be the removal of 80 acres of trees, you know, they put their hands in their heart and they were like, do the people know? Do they know? Which led us to this rally and so forth. Over time, though, there was this confrontation with the state, which is heavy. right? It's heavy to be facing the police, to be in city council. This is what I would call, or I call the hard space, where I'm at a river, our local river is the Chattahoochee River, and I am asking and praying for courage, the courage of Harriet Tubman, the courage of other abolitionists before me, because it's not easy. I could just stay in my lane. I could just stay. We could do die cuts and sing and do puppet shows. But it's so important. And we named the school after brave people. And we've called that energy into that. And in the same sense that we are facing and we're resisting, part of that resistance is the soft space, is creating the reimagined world. So having a farm, in this space. And we were actually, because of our work with the Muskogee, given seeds that the Muskogee took with them when they were displaced from Georgia to Oklahoma. And they asked, let the children speak to the corn. And the children did. They said, I love you. I want to grow with you. So we're now growing corn. So that's the soft space. We are collectively building, this reimagined world and the community that we want to have, where people don't have enough food. With the children, we're building the food pantry. We're taking care of each other, the birds and all the things. And I think it's important that you find a balance. I think it's important, if you've taken up activism and organizing that we've done, and you need to be chanting, and we need people to engage in resistance. And part of that is the spaces where you're building community of mutual aid, that you're taking care of the needs of your community. Who are the elders of your community who don't have someone to visit them? How are we taking the food? How are we showing up for members of our community that are marginalized, whose voices have been shut out? And that is where I find the balance, I believe, between the hard spaces and the soft spaces.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you have to do the hard work, but at the same time, you must build what you want, build the soft. Because one or the other doesn't really grow what you're trying to grow, or it isn't as authentic.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you can't just bury yourself in the sand to say this is what is beautiful, but that we have to fight this for this beauty to exist. It's like that balance, I think. And I think that's one of the things I've always so admired about your work, is your ability to go out on behalf of coming in, and on behalf of your own community, and building something that is bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think even for your own care, it's required. It's your own care. I mean, I've seen things within the last 2 years, especially coming out, what we see visually coming out of Gaza, and the children and the horror and the violence, that I've never seen in my life. It's enough to paralyze you. It's enough that, if we believe, as James Baldwin says, all children belong to us, how do I not act? How do I not speak? And at the same time, what they need for us to be healthy, right? For me to be not in complete despair, that I'm immobilized, that I'm paralyzed, but that I'm taking care of myself and my community so that I can act on behalf of. And I think people figure it out for themselves. In the classroom, it's got to be relevant, contextual, meaningful. It can mean that they're organizing spaces that are adults, that we have a parent council, we have a social justice committee. And some of these conversations are not necessarily with children, but they're on behalf of what is it that we're wrestling with and trying to figure out.
And I know that's something that you've helped me with tremendously. And just that idea of nurturing something at home that can have a legacy, right? That can move beyond the confines of the classroom, that both responds to who children are and the joy and curiosity that they bring into the world, but also honors their deep intelligence, and takes the responsibility for creating. I think, like you said earlier, that children have this empathy, but I think, like anything, it requires a responsiveness. It requires the effort, I guess, and willingness to engage constantly, in perhaps both the beautiful and the challenging. But when you think about the work that you do every day, the way that you live, I keep wanting to challenge this idea of work because it does feel bigger than that, right? It is life. What is the legacy that you hope to leave?
I mean, I don't know that I always think about legacy in a sense of like, I feel like I, again, am here because of those before me. So I almost feel as though it's a thread that we're carrying with us, right? It's the stories of Harriet Tubman. It's the story of so many that we're weaving and quilting it together. And I think very often we've thought of early childhood education as a space where those conversations and that way of being, it wasn't for us. That was something that we discussed and talked about outside. So I want to bring it in. If that's the legacy, I want to bring those conversations and threads within our doors, that we are profoundly honoring children's identity and their sense of place. And we were in New Zealand together, right? And I remember going to visit a school, and I hope I don't get this wrong, but there was a Maori statement talking about you have to walk through the past into the future. Right. So we know that part of understanding where we're going is understanding where we've been and making those connections. There was violence that happened on this land. Specifically, there was a big battle, the Civil War battle right here. And part of the rematriation and healing is the planting of the corn, is telling those stories and moving forward in a way that acknowledges the past. And also moves us forward from a place of accountability and justice. And so I think for us is this shift in early childhood education of like, again, we're not just getting kids to be ready to be consumers or workers. If your kids can have all this quote unquote academic knowledge, but we've taught them out of them to be empathetic and caring, then we haven't done the work. That's not the work. I want us to merge and carry those threads of those before us. And I think that is really what's important. What's sad about what's happening in the world now and today is like, I thought we had these conversations. I thought we said never again. I thought we had land acknowledgements to say and honor the indigenous people before us. And yet, as much as we talk about, oh, this is the corn that we're bringing back from the Muskogee, what about the olive trees in Gaza? What about the land in Sudan and Congo? So I feel like we haven't yet recognized our power as early child educators, and that power that we hold within the classroom and the communities to make shifts in our way of being as we partner with families, and then exert other kinds of power. I personally think we need to be organizing more.
Yeah, and I was reading your book again and just preparing for our conversation, and something that came up. It was very interesting to connect to the natural world and children's natural connection to the natural world as well, and their deep care. And this idea that you speak about, sometimes children are viewed as, their interests are viewed as cute. And yet when we actually pay attention to how they watch, what they're paying attention to, it's quite profound. And I found it was really interesting because I've read several books in the last 6 months different books that have all referred to or made mention of in some way the way that trees speak to each other, the way that trees are in community. When I was reading your book, you mentioned it. I'm like, gosh, this is like the sixth book that has referred to this. And you referred to it through the interests of children. And I'm saying this because I think that the notion of following children's interest is it's something that lots of early childhood educators talk about. But I don't know that we have stopped to really try to understand the level of the interest that children actually have, and that children, when we do talk about community, it's not just the people in our classrooms. It's not just the nice stuff. It's not just the celebrating of the birthday, and it is all of it. It is, and this is something that I just think that you have done so well. I don't even have a question in all of that.
I have.
I just marvel. I'm marveling.
This is just all.
I always marvel.
Yeah. I love that as well. I think one of the things I know is that there's a whole lot going on in the world right now that's heavy. And you talk about the hard spaces, and the way that you take that up in your community with such desire to make a difference. It's got to be hard work. Where do you find joy and laughter? Because I know that one of the things that we both love so much about you is your joyfulness. And in so many of our encounters together, we have found laughter and joy, and in a world that can feel so heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
where do you find that for you?
Oh my goodness. It's the truth, because there are times I've cried. My heart has melted. I think we're all deeply sensitive people, and I'm really grateful for that sensitivity, as most early child educators are. I think for us is, again, being in community, the way that we're living together, the families, my relationships brings me joy. I have a wicked sense of humor. I'll keep it tame as we're recording. Me and the teachers, we're really cheeky, together, and we retreat and we have fun and we converse and we hold each other. And again, it's being in the garden, it's taking the walks. I mean, last night I did a hike with a group of people to a forest that we're trying to save. So I think it's the joy is the connectivity. It brings me joy. It's my connections with community, with families. Organizing can be difficult, right? Like, you don't always necessarily agree, but we're so committed to this reimagined world that we're willing to navigate. I mean, it's cooking, I just love spending time with my family and my grandmother, who's 91 years old. She took me to the aquarium and almost died. It was like 5,000 people, and I was completely overstimulated. And I was like, I kept saying, do y'all really think the turtles want to be in a large aquarium? So my family was like, shut up, Rukia.
Another thing to advocate for.
It's like so many. They're like, not today, Rukia. And I think my relationships with you guys, I mean, we've met. I feel like it's maybe not quite 20 years.
Yeah, just under.
It's just under 20 years.
Almost 20 years. And when we first met, we were talking about communities of practice. So it's even being in those moments when I'm feeling like, what am I doing? And having people around me that I can have conversations with, that I can delve into. And everyone needs community of practices, family, trees, moments that you're intentionally taking care of yourself. And I really encourage, especially early child educators, take care of your body, take care of yourself, let your feet touch the earth, ground yourself, because the work is so spiritual, it's so beautiful, it's so laborious. and we have to stay connected.
Yeah. That trip that we went on, it was such a gift, that week long or 10 days. I can't remember how long it was, to New Zealand. We learned so much about the beautiful practices that go on in New Zealand. I know there's some listeners for the podcast there, but also about each other. And we came from different places and we were able to connect with each other. And I will never forget, Rukia, that bus trip when they took us somewhere and it was just so bouncy and I was so sick. I don't know. We went through a lot of hills and you were so kind to me and rubbed my head the whole time. And all I wanted to do was get sick. But I do have a question, actually. And I know I've thanked you before, but I'm going to keep thanking you because I don't know what it was. There was just something about that moment, Rukia, that touched my heart so deeply. And I will never forget it. It seemed like a simple task, a simple offering, but it was really profound. And I think that happens a lot. And we don't always get to know how we affect each other. But you have a unrelenting commitment to your community and to the things that are important to you. How do you bring families in? Because I'm sure that would be a question that a lot of people would have. What happens if a family come? And I'm sure they don't, but if they come and they say, this doesn't feel right for me. Like, how do you orient, onboard, welcome? What is your process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I've been definitely inspired by the works that we've seen from our educators in Reggio Emilia and certainly other different settings. And just really, my grandmother helped to raise me. And so again, making the shift of we're in partnership with families. So we do tours to start off and we really take our time to do a tour, where we walk through the space and we talk about our values and, certain things I didn't mention during the tour. I now talk about, like, we had families come in and say, I don't want my son to play with this. And I don't want them to put dresses on. I didn't think I needed to address that. So now when I give the tours, I talk about how we approach guidance, our beliefs around children's play very explicitly. So families can make a choice. So there is some shared values that we're coming upon. I think you will do some convincing and shifts, but if your values are so polar opposite, there's going to be a lot of friction. So we give a really strong tour. Even with our application, we ask families, how do they align with ours? And even in the enrollment space, I make a point to talk to families. As our program administrator does, we have play dates before they enroll, so we get to know them. We have home visits with the families before they come, and we kind of talk some, again, through our beliefs. So we see enrollment is not about that individual child, but again, they come with the hopes and dreams of their families and their ancestors. And very often, if you've got a mom coming in the infant room, she's not quite ready yet. Right? And if America, the United States, had better, leave, she would be at home. So she's experiencing grief. And so I've learned to do a better job of not just welcoming that child, but how do I hold that mom? How do I assure her and I'm in a communication? So even when they enter, I make myself available. I'm present to greet them, to check in on them, and really build what I would say would be warm relationships. It's not about an exchange of commerce. It's about being in community. And I think people feel that because as much as sometimes we may be frustrated, parents are in grinds. They're also in capitalistic grinds. They're trying to figure it out. They have guilt, all these different things. And so what we've had over years is really strong family relationships with ourselves and the admin, but even amongst our families. I mean, they have all kind of potluck dinners, and I'm sure that's in a lot of centers and a lot of spaces. And I think we do a lot to nurture that.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of, someone who's been in that beautiful site and felt the energy and the music and the joy and the welcoming, it's there again. I don't have words. It really does live in the walls of your of your center, and it's just so beautiful. And for those of you who are interested, you have a beautiful social media site that people can follow you and learn more about what you're doing and what your school is paying attention to and how you're moving. And it is just to be clear, it's on Facebook. You're on Facebook and
We're on
Instagram
and Instagram, and yeah, we do try to highlight and amplify the voices of young children in our.
Yeah, and so it's the Highlander School,
yes,
right? Yeah,
the Highlander School.
Yeah, if you have a chance and are interested, I would strongly recommend that you follow them because it's just absolutely beautiful.
We share your story often in our work and our travels too. In hopes of people that
we talk about you, Rukia.
We talk about you all the time.
It is the Highlander School ATL.
Okay.
So we have a couple of just little rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What's the one thing you hope every child takes away from their early childhood experience?
Sense of belonging, love.
Self-care, my friend. I know it was even hard to get you're so busy. You get up in the morning prior to the work day and you are engaged and involved in your community at the end of the day. You give a lot. What is your guilty pleasure? What do you like to do when you're not thinking about all this other stuff?
My guilt.
Something that's appropriate for the podcast.
Oh, okay. Appropriate is very helpful. Oh my goodness. Massages. I love touch. It's something that I can give, and it's also something that I like to receive. A little hot oil. Okay, so keep it clean.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, we are so grateful that you have been part of our lives and touched our lives, and that you agreed to be here today and have this conversation. We've been really looking forward to it for a while. So,
yeah.
Thank you, beautiful friend.
I am so grateful to be in this space. And I wanted to mention one last thing as we end our time together. You mentioned the New Zealand trip and touch. We went to New Zealand together twice. And I don't know if you guys remember, my mother had just passed away.
I do remember.
Been through some really hard times. And that for me is just community, because in that space, you guys held me. And I'm so grateful to be in community with you all and the work that you are doing to amplify the voices of so many, and therefore the voices of so many children.
I'm so happy that we were able to have this conversation with her and that so many folks will be able to hear it.
Yeah. I really do. I want to encourage people to purchase her book, Our Beloved Community. The idea of looking past to go forward. She lives it so fully. She is such a gift. I don't know that she knows what a gift that she is and how unusual what she does. Like, that school is a beacon for our times.
And I think the fact that it's like this one small site in a community in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm sure there's others out there that are doing this incredible work too, in their own ways. And I think that what she can do is lead others forward in this thinking about. I think one of the things that I am always so touched with her is her connection to family. And the way that she talked about, it's not about registering families. It's not about enrollment. It's about building a bigger community together. And that when folks come into that program, they know that they're coming into something that is different. Mm-hmm. And they choose that, right?
I mean, you and I ask the question of communities all the time, of ourselves, in our own organizations, the question, what kind of world do you want to live in? And what's the role of early education in that? And the way that she understands the depth of that question, right? And has created an entire school and community based on that question. And the clarity the clarity that she has in answering the question. And then that, because she understands the answer of the kind of world that she wants to live in, and what's important to her and her community, and the connection to her ancestors and to the land, and to the ancestors of the whole community. I think it gives them such a direction, and it unfolds in such a beautiful way when you're there. It's
the commitment and intention. Like it's that she thinks about all the intentional ways to do that. Like, it's not just a belief in it, but it's how she moves into every single day, every single week, every single month. How they plan their gardens, their spaces. I think we did a work trip there. We did. One time, a group of us went down to help her. It was at the opening of the Highlander School. The school was just open. No, I think it was an open house. It was the national conference, and they had an open house, and they were making some changes, and so we had gone and we had a little gathering of community ourselves, and were welcomed in and helped her. But it is just a little treasure. If you get a chance to look her up online, certainly get her book. I don't follow her on Instagram. Yeah. She is a wise woman, and a hoot, and an absolute hoot. And a hoot. Yeah. So we hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and that if you're following us on whatever platform that you are on, that you subscribe, leave us a comment or review, and we'd love to hear from you. A big thank you again to Storypark. You've been listening to Little Big Ideas, a podcast brought to you by your hosts, Anne-Marie Coughlin and Lori McGee, with the help of our friends at Storypark.